Stephen King is one of the most prolific authors alive. Around the time he was 25, King was living in Maine in a trailer with his wife and 2 kids. He taught public school English while writing short stories on the side for men's magazines. When a friend suggested he try writing a story with a female protagonist, King began plotting out the idea for what would eventually become Carrie. Carrie is now famous for the opening shower scene in which the protagonist Carrie White gets her period for the first time and is subjected to the ridicule of her classmates. But at the time of writing, King was uncomfortable with the material he was churning out due to not feeling like he could accurately portray this material from a woman's perspective. Alright, so the legend goes, King discarded the draft after only writing 3 pages. Well, the next day, his wife, author Tabitha Jane King, retrieved said pages from the trash and urged him to continue, saying, "There's something there." King sat with the material and with the help of some input from his wife began fleshing out the story, drawing on inspiration from 2 girls he knew at the school he taught at. One was consistently teased by her classmates due to her impoverished background, and the other came from a devoutly religious family. Together, they became Carrie White. At the time, King felt pretty cynical when it came to writing. He didn't believe that there was any real financial merit to it, and found himself only finishing the story to please his wife. He finished the story as a 98-page novella that he absolutely hated, but after letting it sit for some time, he decided to rewrite it, fleshing it out to become novel length. It was at this point that the format of the novel, which is littered with fabricated book excerpts and newspaper articles, began to emerge. Eventually pleased with the work, King started submitting it to publishers. In November of 1973, the manuscript was received by editor Bill Thompson at Doubleday. Thompson had read a few of King's manuscripts that would later be published under his pseudonym Richard Bachman, and he enjoyed King's work, Carrie especially. Thompson worked with King on revising the novel. In true Stephen King form, the original ending had Carrie growing devil horns from her head and destroying an airplane from the sky with her mind. They scrapped that, and that was for the best. Then Thompson went to bat and convinced executive editor Lee Barker to buy the novel. King was offered an advance of $1,500. Advocating for whom would later become his close friend, Thompson had the advance bumped to $2,500, which was considered fairly high at the time for a debut author. On April 5th, 1974, Carrie was published with a print run of 30,000 copies. By May, the novel fell into the laps of editors at New American Library, who offered Doubleday $400,000 for the mass market paperback rights. King received half of that, and with that money was able to quit his job as a teacher and embark on a career as a full-time author, which by the end of the first year, well, looked pretty solid. The paperback edition of Carrie sold 1 million copies that year, and by 1976, with the help of a film adaptation by Brian De Palma and starring Sissy Spacek, became a New York Times bestseller, remaining on the list for 14 weeks and peaking at number 3. The novel and the movie threw King into the mainstream spotlight, and there was no going back from there. Since then, he has become one of the most successful and prolific authors of all time, with consistent bestsellers, film and TV adaptations, stage adaptations, remakes, and more.